Hello, class. I'm so sorry I'm not going to be there today. However, we're still going to go over homework, which was to read Hawthorne's Young Goodman Brown. And today, within this PowerPoint, we're going to dive into the elements of things that appear in the story, and we're also going to get into some historical events as well. Now, since I'm not there, the warm-up is going to be a little bit different, so we're just going to walk through it together. My first question for you is, what does Goodman mean? To start off, we have Young Goodman Brown. But Goodman's going to mean something a little bit different. It means to be of a humble birth. That's great. But what does that mean? What does that mean to be of a humble birth? You're going to have a lower social status. You're not going to live like the aristocrats in society. And you're going to have a little money. But you're going to have what you need. Example, Jesus. Now, weird that we're bringing up some religious factors. And we studied in our past history classes that the Puritans were a branch of Christianity and extremely religious. So kind of think about the connections that might be with religion and Young Goodman Brown and kind of what we see playing on each other within this piece. But first we're going to start with Hawthorne's family and figure out why the story is placed and the things that are mentioned are the way that they are. So let's start with William Hawthorne. He was the first known relative to arrive to America. He settled in Salem, Massachusetts, and he had many prominent roles within the community. So he was a pretty big and well-known guy. He was a legislator, so he made laws, magistrate, and a preacher. But he's most famously known in history for his conviction of Anne Coleman. Think of the Scarlet Letter. Next, we're going to have John Hawthorne. And he's this picture I have on the slide for you, and he's going to be the son of William. He, like his father, is going to be a magistrate, and he's going to be a magistrate during the Salem Witch Trials. So he gets coined with the name Witch Judge. During the trials, there's something weird that happens where a husband is so angry with the trial of his wife that he puts a curse on the Hawthorne family line, and this is going to be a thought in the back of the Hawthorne family line for generations to come. And you're going to see later on in some things that we read that Hawthorne even mentions this curse within his writing. The third and the fourth generations move more towards farming. But then we see with the fifth generation, with Nathaniel Hawthorne's father, Captain Nathaniel Hawthorne, that they're going to move more towards the sea. However, Nathaniel Hawthorne's father is going to die of yellow fever when Hawthorne is young. So let's move on to Hawthorne. He's going to be born on July 4th, 1804 in Salem. He's also going to go to college and graduate in 1825. He's going to make many friends when he's in college, especially important one is going to be a future president, Franklin Pierce. He wrote many of his earlier pieces set in the colonial time, for example, like our homework, Young Goodman Brown. He married Sophia Peabody in 1842, and they had 3 children, Una, Rose, and Julian. It's not going to be until the 1850s that we see Hawthorne's work really pick up and really be noticed. Also during that time, in the late 1800s, Franklin Pierce becomes president and gives Hawthorne a job. So we're going to see that Hawthorne is moving around all over the area, Concord, Liverpool, and back to Salem. It's just all one big circle he keeps making in this area. Now, like many of the transcendentalists who ran in the same circle, he's also going to be friends with Emerson, Thoreau, Fuller, and they all kind of had this intermingling of ideas and friendship going on during this time. However, Hawthorne himself is known for his prose and the use of the uncanny. Unfortunately, he's going to die in his sleep in 1864. Now let's get into Young Goodman Brown, and we're just going to go over a brief summary of the story itself. So we start with the character Young Goodman Brown, and we know that he wants to run this errand. We never know what this errand specifically is, but we do know that he has to complete this errand between the time period of dusk and dawn. Now, his wife, Faith, who is wearing a pink ribbon, that's going to be important later, his wife, Faith, asked him not to go. She says, I have a weird feeling about it, I had some dreams, thoughts, just don't go. But Young Goodman Brown insists on going anyways. So he heads to the forest, he enters, and he starts getting a little freaked out. He's looking around behind him, trying to see if anybody's following him, Indian attacks, all sorts of things. Well, then later on, He's walking, and he comes up to an old man sitting in the forest waiting for young Goodman Brown, and the man kind of looks familiar. So the man comes up to him, and he has this walking staff that looks like a serpent. It seems like we're getting more biblical references here. The old man is going to offer young Goodman Brown his walking staff to walk faster. Young Goodman Brown takes it, and they start walking, and they're talking about his family members. And young Goodman Brown talks about what good Christians they are. And the old man says, "Oh yes, I know your family members. I've helped them with a lot of things." Next, they're going to run into Goody Cloyce, and she's going to be someone who was really a strong influence in young Goodman Brown's life. She's going to have taught him everything he knows about religion. But in the forest, she admits she's a witch. She claims that the old man is the devil, and that they're heading towards the devil's ceremony. So at this point, young Goodman Brown is ready to turn back around and get the heck out of that forest. Well, moving on, he finds that the minister and deacon are also going to the devil's ceremony, and overhears them talking. And after they pass, he sees Faith's pink ribbon stuck in the trees of the forest. So he follows them to the ceremony, thinking that Faith is lost or has been taken. So he goes to the ceremony, and he sees two women bring up this figure that's going to be inducted into this devil's society. And he sees that the person underneath is Faith. And he tells Faith, "Look up to the heavens and turn away from evil." Next, young Goodman Brown wakes up, and it's morning time. And he walks around town. He sees a minister who blesses him. He sees the deacon who prays over him. He sees Goody teaching children. And so for the rest of his life, he believes everyone is evil, a sinner. He's very cynical, and dies a grumpy old man. So let's get further into this. So the setting of young Goodman Brown is in colonial times, in the Puritan Salem. So he's going to be in Salem, and he's going to be surrounded by Puritans who are extremely religious in their beliefs. We have young Goodman Brown, who's the protagonist. He's going to be a good Christian. He's going to have family pride. However, his curiosity is going to be his downfall. Next, we have Faith, young Goodman Brown's wife, and she's going to be the embodiment of virtue. We have the old man/devil, who acts as Goodman Brown's temptation. He can turn godly men to sin and evil. Next, we have Goody, who claims to be a witch. However, she also taught young Goodman Brown everything he knows about religion. And last, we have the minister and Deacon Gookin, who are both prominent men in the church and the community. However, they both follow the devil. Some symbolism we see within this story is the staff, the biblical reference to the Garden of Eden, where the serpent acts as Eve's temptation. So just like Eve, young Goodman Brown is going to take that temptation. So therefore, the staff also represents curiosity. Next, we're going to have Faith's pink ribbon, which is going to represent purity, innocence, and happiness. So whenever he sees that pink ribbon detached from Faith, it's going to represent the loss of faith, the loss of purity, innocence, and he's no longer happy. The ties are broken. So here are some historical events that happened in young Goodman Brown. We have the Salem Witch Trials that are specifically mentioned, as well as Puritan intolerance and King Philip's War. But however, today we're going to focus on the Salem Witch Trials, and we're going to watch a quick video to tell us about these trials.
The Salem Witch Trials, 1692 to 1693. In Salem Village, Massachusetts, February 1692, Betty Paris, age 9, and Abigail Williams, age 11, the daughter and niece of Reverend Samuel Paris, became ill. Their health failed to improve, and they went into constant fits, so a doctor called William Griggs was called in. His diagnosis? Bewitchment. Soon other young women began to exhibit similar behavior, and a wave of hysteria spread throughout colonial Massachusetts. So, a special court assembled in Salem to hear the cases and find people guilty of witchcraft. Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba were the first people to be accused and arrested of bewitching Betty Paris and Abigail Williams. Every week, more and more were accused and arrested. A belief and fear of the supernatural, and the idea that some humans, witches, were given power to harm others through it, a recent smallpox epidemic, and the threat of attack by Native American tribes all fueled the hysteria in the Salem community. The first convicted witch, Bridget Bishop, was described as wearing black clothing and odd costumes, which was against the strict Puritan code of Salem. She was hanged on June 10, 1692, at Gallows Hill. 18 more people were executed by hanging after being convicted of being a witch. Several others died in prison, and one man was even crushed to death by heavy stones as a form of torture. Contrary to popular belief, none of the condemned were burned at the stake. 150 more people would be accused of witchcraft, but by September 1692, the hysteria had died down and people started to turn against the trials, with the last one ending in early 1693. Subscribe to see more history videos.
All right, so we know the Salem Witch Trials began in the spring of 1692, and we know that it was led by the Puritans. Now, the Puritans believed the devil and supernatural. They were real fears for the Puritans. So everything that was happening with the smallpox, the Native Americans, and belief of the supernatural led to this hysteria. Therefore, the trials were a result of extreme fear. So first, the trials began, or the witch trials began, with Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, and they started having fits. But it's not until Dr. William Griggs comes in and diagnoses the girls by being possessed and the fits being the result of witchcraft. So first convicted witch is going to be Bridget Bishop. And then the other two major players within this are going to be Jonathan Corwin and John Hawthorne. And they're going to act as the judges within this trial, or trials, I should say. So the aftermath of the Salem Witch Trials. It lasted until early 1693. The governor dissolved these courts. They were no longer in use. And by May, those that were still in prison were released. The trials were deemed unlawful. And the names of the witches that were convicted were restored, and their family honor given back. However, we're still going to see the Salem Witch Trials portrayed in many different mediums. We're going to see movies that come out later on. There's still the subject of different fictions and books, and we're going to see many documentaries being made about the Salem Witch Trials. And something about them still sparks curiosity with many people. So how does this relate to young Goodman Brown? Hawthorne specifically changed his name to separate himself from his family and these trials. However, he's going to use his family history and the things that related to his family and being raised in Salem and his relationship to Salem for many of his works in his earlier times and later on. Secondly, Hawthorne, like I just mentioned, grew up in Salem, and many of his family still remained there, even though when he was working for President Pierce, he was moving all over. His family stayed in Salem. Now, the Salem Witch Trials are specifically mentioned in the literature, and that's going to be really important that he mentions those as well. So for the closing, on a sheet of paper, I want you to list 3 new things that you learned today, and I want you to keep this paper for class tomorrow because we're going to have a discussion beginning of class, And then later this week we're going to start on a mock trial for the Salem Witch Trials, and we're going to be working with the history teachers to kind of put this together. I hope y'all have a great day, and I will see y'all when I get back.